Did you know that the Middle East has had a lot of fighting and disagreements for a long time? But now, China is surprising the world by trying to bring peace to the region through a diplomatic coup. To better understand this development, let's deeply explore how China is making big efforts to make things better in the Middle East and improve international relations. Let's go! In the 21st century, not only has our lifestyle changed, but also our international relations and politics. The world is becoming more interconnected, and successful countries are those trained at navigating complex relationships through skillful negotiation. Strained relations between two nations, like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, bring about numerous problems for the entire world. Such conflicts force other countries to take sides, leading to divisions and support for their allies' narratives. For instance, if the US supports Ukraine, its allies will also have to support Ukraine, or else they will face consequences. Despite knowing that conflicts hinder a prosperous future, superpowers still tend to choose sides. One well-known example of this is the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which has persisted for years without any attempts to resolve it. Nations have suffered due to this rivalry, while some have taken advantage of the conflict. China, after many years, finally decided to address the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and through considerable efforts, achieved the seemingly impossible by successfully resolving their dispute. This brought much-needed relief to the suffering nations affected by the conflict. The rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran posed a dilemma for other countries, particularly Muslim nations, as they struggled to choose sides. Some Muslims would go on pilgrimage to Iran, while others considered Saudi Arabia as a holy place. During the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, Muslim countries, like Pakistan, were unsure about whom to support. Pakistan is friends with Saudi Arabia and is also Iran's neighbor, which made things tricky. Sometimes, Pakistan would stand with Saudi Arabia, and other times it would lean towards supporting Iran. This led to both Saudi Arabia and Iran feeling unhappy with Pakistan's decisions at different times. So, Pakistan was caught in a difficult situation, trying to balance its relationships with both nations during the conflict. Similarly, China exercises caution to avoid taking sides in the conflict, as its primary goal is to foster positive relationships with all nations involved. Recognizing the significance of a harmonious Middle East for global stability, China took the proactive step of mediating and seeking a resolution to the long-standing dispute between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Despite its sincere intentions, rather than receiving the expected appreciation for its peacemaking efforts, China encountered criticism. Some doubters questioned the authenticity of China's actions, raising doubts about whether these diplomatic endeavors were merely a publicity stunt. Nonetheless, China remains committed to promoting peace and cooperation, seeking genuine solutions to complex global issues. The Western media's coverage has led to suspicions about China's true intentions, suggesting that there might be underlying interest behind its diplomatic efforts. The media also attempts to explain why the US did not take a more active interest in resolving the conflict. When we talk about superpowers within the United Nations, their role in resolving significant global issues, especially long-standing conflicts, cannot be overstated. These influential countries, like the US, hold the power to champion the causes of all nations, just as they did during the Ukraine crisis. The essence of their position is not to pick sides, as taking such a stance would only deepen the complexities of the situation. Instead, these powerful nations are expected to be agents of solutions, working diligently to navigate through the challenges without becoming entangled in the conflict itself. By doing so, they can effectively contribute to a more stable and harmonious world. However, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the US didn't stay neutral. Instead, it took Ukraine's side and supported them. This made people wonder why the US got involved and what benefits it gained from taking that stance. Some people think the US did it to show support for their friend Ukraine and to stand for democratic values. But others worried that this involvement could make the situation worse and cause more problems. When powerful countries like the US get involved in conflicts, it can be a sensitive issue. Some people say the US should remain neutral and focus on peaceful solutions. It's a complicated situation with different opinions and potential consequences for the region and the world. Despite the US claiming to stand with the innocent and support them, its actions often contradict its words. The question arises, if the US possesses the capability to resolve conflicts, why does it choose to support only one nation? This paradox becomes evident in the case of Taiwan, where the U.S. shows support, yet it remains uninvolved in mediating the Saudi Arabia and Iran conflict in the Middle East. The Middle East remains important to the U.S. as long as it remains divided. If the oil-producing countries were to unite, the U.S. would lose its ability to exploit them. A united Middle East could potentially challenge the U.S. power, which goes against its divide-and-rule strategy. Therefore, attempting to resolve the Saudi Arabia and Iran conflict is considered detrimental to U.S. interests. The U.S. supports Taiwan and Ukraine, not necessarily out of sincerity for these nations, but because it benefits from their ongoing conflicts. The U.S. media uses catchy headlines and twisted explanations to shape narratives and promote its propaganda rather than honestly explaining why it hasn't taken a more active role in resolving the Saudi Arabia and Iran conflict. On the other hand, China's efforts to mediate and solve the conflict are met with skepticism and attempts to downplay its role. The U.S. media suggests that China's actions are self-serving, primarily benefiting China. However, it's crucial to recognize that resolving the conflict is beneficial for everyone involved, including China. For China, being drawn into taking sides in the Middle East conflict would have been problematic. As an oil-dependent nation, China requires stability in the region to secure its oil supply. The harmonious Saudi Arabia and Iran relationship allows China to access oil resources from both nations. Saudi Arabia is not only willing to be a part of BRICS, but is also helping China establish a positive relationship with both Saudi Arabia and Iran. The ongoing conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran posed a significant obstacle to maintaining good ties with both nations. However, other reasons are driving China's efforts to bring peace to the region, which contribute to China's growing influence and power on the global stage. China has been steadily gaining influence worldwide, reaching a position of prominence once held by the U.S. As a result, it has taken on the responsibility of promoting peace and resolving conflicts among nations to strengthen its position. Peace initiatives have become a means for China to enhance its power and global standing. It has been successful in engaging in peace talks with various countries, even when there seem to be no immediate benefits. Emphasizing the benefits of peace, China understands that a more connected world fosters economic growth, increased trade, and aid opportunities for developing nations from various sources. Strong international connections enable countries to work together in harmony, bringing mutual advantages. One notable example of China's conflict resolution efforts is its involvement in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Despite not receiving any direct benefits, China extended business aid to Russia, expanding trade ties even amid U.S. sanctions. Meanwhile, the U.S. primarily provided aid to Ukraine, particularly in the form of military assistance. China has a strong commitment to resolving global conflicts, as it believes that doing so will help in building more friendships. However, the U.S., on the other hand, seems to be less supportive of peace efforts. In the past, wars may have benefited many countries, but the changing times have shown that peace brings long-lasting advantages compared to temporary gains from war. China is open to cooperation and reconciliation with the U.S., but the U.S. appears to be adhering to old methods of seeking benefits. This is a crucial moment for leading powers to collaborate and address century-long issues. Escalating conflicts and seeking hidden advantages can cause significant harm to the entire world. The U.S. needs to acknowledge and appreciate China's peacemaking efforts and even contribute to similar initiatives. Instead, the U.S. has resorted to propaganda, but people can discern sincerity from insincerity. It is widely recognized that the U.S. primarily prioritizes its interests over other considerations. Perhaps the U.S.'s self-centered attitude has allowed China to step in and replace it as a leading power. The world needs a dominant force that benefits from peace rather than from conflict. Choosing cooperation over confrontation can lead to a more prosperous and harmonious global community. Thanks for watching. Do you believe China's diplomatic coup will lead to a more peaceful world? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more insightful content.